Hey, guys, tonight, we dive into the delightfully dysfunctional world of the ancient Greek gods. A pantheon so powerful, so dramatic, and so emotionally unstable. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's begin with the big guy himself, Zeus, god of the sky, ruler of Olympus, and walking proof that absolute power absolutely fries your sense of boundaries. Zeus was the youngest son of Cronus and Rhea. His dad, like all great fathers, had a habit of swallowing his children whole to prevent them from overthrowing him. Fortunately, Rhea saved baby Zeus by tricking Cronus with a rock wrapped in a blanket, which tells you a lot about how closely this guy paid attention. Once Zeus grew up, he led a divine rebellion against Cronus. Sliced open his father's stomach, Freud would have a field day on, freed his siblings, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Hestia, and Demeter. Boom! The original dysfunctional family was born. After the gods won the war against the Titans, Zeus became king. He ruled the heavens, controlled thunder and lightning, and was in charge of cosmic order, justice, and oaths in theory. That is, in practice, Zeus spent most of his time transforming into various animals and seducing anything with a pulse. Swans, bulls, eagles, golden mist. The man had no chill and no consistent moral code. Imagine your country's Supreme Court justice turning into a goose to flirt with civilians. That's Zeus, but with more lightning. His love life was an open-source disaster. He married his sister Hera, which went about as well as you'd expect. He had dozens of affairs with goddesses, nymphs, mortals, and probably one or two houseplants. The result? An overwhelming number of demigod children, many of whom had serious parental abandonment issues and accidentally founded entire mythologies. Despite all that, Zeus wasn't entirely chaotic. When he wasn't cheating or chucking lightning bolts at mortals who didn't offer proper sacrifices, he acted as the cosmic referee. He enforced oaths, upheld law, and occasionally punished people for being more arrogant than he was, which, frankly, took effort. Zeus was respected, feared, and constantly causing PR nightmares for Olympus. He had power, presence, and zero understanding of personal space. He was both protector and predator, judge and joke, the ultimate divine contradiction. Hera is technically the goddess of marriage, family, and childbirth, which is ironic because her own marriage is an absolute dumpster fire in a golden chariot. She's Zeus's wife and his sister, because, you know, mythology. Their wedding was supposed to be the divine ideal of sacred union. Instead, it turned into a centuries-long soap opera filled with infidelity, revenge, and a shocking number of people turned into animals, trees, or stone. Hera is powerful, the undisputed queen of the gods. But her power mostly expresses itself in one very specific way: vengeance. Not on Zeus, of course, that would be too simple. Hera's fury is laser-focused on the women Zeus seduces, or, let's be honest, outright kidnaps, and their unfortunate children. She once turned a woman into a cow, cursed another to only speak in echoes, and, in one particularly cruel moment, tried to kill baby Hercules with a pair of serpents. That was literally his first day alive. It's hard to blame her entirely. Imagine being the goddess of marriage while your husband is out here inventing new forms of animal-based flirtation. Still, her divine coping mechanisms often included eternal curses and elaborate punishments. Therapy wasn't a thing in ancient Greece, so revenge was the next best option. Yet, Hera wasn't just a celestial grudge holder. She also protected women in childbirth, upheld the sanctity of marriage, theoretically, and punished oaths broken by mortals. She had temples, priests, and a devoted cult following. Cities like Argos and Samos worshipped her as a major force of divine order. In short, Hera was the goddess you prayed to when your husband was faithful, and the one who probably sent a plague when he wasn't. She's a fascinating paradox, the embodiment of female dignity and power in a system that constantly humiliated her. Her story isn't just about jealousy, it's about a woman who was supposed to symbolize unity while holding Olympus together with pure spite and decorative fury. Poseidon was the god of the sea, earthquakes, storms, and, for some reason, horses, because nothing says ocean god like a herd of galloping stallions. But hey, mythology. He was one of the three main brothers. Zeus got the sky, Hades got the underworld, and Poseidon got everything wet, which suited him just fine. He ruled over the vast oceans, commanded sea creatures, both beautiful and nightmarish, and wielded a massive trident, not just a pointy fork, but a three-pronged divine rage stick capable of leveling entire cities. Poseidon was revered and feared in equal measure. Sailors prayed to him for safe passage, fishermen made offerings, and city builders asked his permission before putting anything too close to the shoreline, lest it become beachfront property by accident. But let's be honest, Poseidon had issues, big, crashing, tidal wave-sized, emotional issues. He was the classic, unpredictable uncle, sometimes generous, sometimes devastating, always a bit salty. One moment he's creating islands, the next he's flooding your crops because someone forgot to thank him during a sacrificial goat ceremony. He once struck the ground so hard with his trident that he caused an earthquake just because he lost a city-naming contest to Athena. Seriously, she gave Athens an olive tree. He offered a saltwater spring. The people chose olives. He chose vengeance. That's Poseidon in a nutshell. He also had a rather complicated love life. There were nymphs, mortals, and even one incident involving Medusa, which ended with her getting snake hair and a monster label while he walked away without consequences. Despite all that, Poseidon wasn't just a stormy brute. He was a protector of seafarers, a builder of cities, and, in his calmer moments, a god of prosperity and fertility. He was essential to ancient Greek life, especially for a culture so dependent on the sea, but like the ocean itself, he was always one storm away from reminding everyone who was really in charge. Hades is the god of the underworld, not hell. Exactly, but a vast, gloomy realm where all souls eventually clock out for eternity. Contrary to modern pop culture, Hades wasn't evil. He wasn't even particularly cruel. He was just incredibly tired of everyone. While Zeus got the sky and Poseidon got the seas, Hades drew the short straw and got stuck managing the ancient Greek version of customer service for the dead for eternity, in darkness, surrounded by wailing. He ruled the underworld with a quiet, brooding authority. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud. He didn't throw lightning or crash weddings. He just showed up to work every day, managing the logistics of eternity and making sure souls didn't sneak out the back, the ultimate middle manager. His domain was called Hades. 2. Because, apparently, naming a kingdom after yourself wasn't a red flag back then. It had sections for the heroic Elysium, the average asphodel, and the truly awful Tartarus, ancient Greece's version of a very long detention. And guess who had to oversee all of it? That's right, Hades, the goth workaholic of the gods. Now, about Persephone. Yes, he kidnapped her, not great, definitely problematic. But also, Greek mythology is nothing if not inconsistent, and they actually grew into a functional, weirdly stable marriage. She spent half the year with him, bringing life to the underworld, and the other half on Earth, causing spring. It's less romance, more mythological timeshare. Hades was also the original pet dad. His dog, Cerberus, had 3 heads, a temper, and 0 obedience training. But he kept souls in line mostly. Unlike his brothers, Hades didn't cheat, didn't rage, and didn't crave the spotlight. That's probably why ancient Greeks rarely built temples for him. They were terrified of attracting his attention. He was the quiet, grim uncle you didn't invite to the party, but still respected from a safe, polite distance. Athena is the goddess of wisdom, war, strategy, handicrafts, and staying 10 steps ahead of everyone without breaking a sweat. She's basically the divine embodiment of logic in a world full of emotional wrecks with lightning bolts. Her birth alone is enough to give Freud nightmares. Zeus, after swallowing her pregnant mother Metis, because prophecy, of course, developed a splitting headache. Instead of aspirin, he got a hammer to the skull, and out popped Athena, fully grown, fully armored, and fully unimpressed with everyone. From day one, Athena made it clear she was not here for nonsense. Unlike her war-happy brother, Ares, Athena viewed conflict like a chessboard, something to be analyzed, controlled, and won with minimal shouting and maximum efficiency. If Ares was a chaotic bar fight, Athena was a war room with spreadsheets. She's also the goddess of crafts, which might seem out of place until you realize weaving, in her hands, was a battlefield. Just ask Arachne, a mortal who dared challenge Athena to a weaving contest. Arachne won, technically, but was then turned into a spider for being a little too talented. Moral of the story: be humble, or enjoy your new life in the corner of someone's ceiling. Athena stayed out of romance entirely. Unlike the rest of Olympus, she didn't seduce mortals, marry her brother, or transform into questionable animals. She simply had things to do, cities to protect, heroes to advise, owls to raise. She guided Odysseus home, helped Perseus behead Medusa, and probably edited the Iliad with a red pen. Athena is the goddess you'd want on your debate team, in your war council, or running your startup. She doesn't scream. She doesn't scheme. She simply outsmarts Dash always. Ares was the Greek god of war, bloodshed, and punching first, thinking never. If Athena was war with a blueprint, Ares was war with a sledgehammer and poor impulse control. He represented the brutal, raw chaos of battle, the part where screaming men charged into each other, and no one really knew what was happening, except that things were on fire, and someone just lost a helmet. In short, if Ares shows up, things are about to get loud, violent, and deeply disorganized. Personality-wise, he wasn't exactly Olympus's favorite guest. Even his fellow gods didn't like him. Zeus once called him the most hateful of all the gods, and you know you've messed up when Zeus is calling you a problem. Ares was arrogant, hot-headed, and about as subtle as a flaming chariot. He wasn't particularly respected either. The Greeks admired strategy, restraint, and cleverness, things Ares consistently failed to bring to the table. He didn't win battles with tactics. He just stormed in, swinging. That worked occasionally, but more often than not, it left a trail of dead bodies and deeply annoyed allies. That said, Ares was still terrifying. He was the god of fear, literally. His sons were named Phobos and Deimos, aka panic and terror, and he loved being in the thick of a brawl. He also had an affair with Aphrodite, which sounds romantic until you remember it ended with him getting caught in an invisible net by her husband, Hephaestus, and laughed at by the entire pantheon. Ancient Greek tabloids had a field day. In Roman mythology, Ares got a makeover as Mars, more disciplined, more honorable, less sweaty, but in Greece, he stayed the chaotic, muscle-bound avatar of violence. Still, Ares had his moments. In times of actual war, he was feared and revered. Warriors made sacrifices to him, hoping he'd bring them strength or at least ignore them for a while. And when he wasn't breaking things, he did ride a cool chariot pulled by fire-breathing horses, which earns him at least one style point. Aphrodite was the goddess of love, beauty, desire, and romantic messes with extremely high body counts. If you've ever seen someone fall in love way too fast with exactly the wrong person, congratulations, you've witnessed Aphrodite's divine influence. There are two origin stories for her, depending on how much trauma you can stomach. In one version, she's the daughter of Zeus and Dione. In the older, and frankly much weirder version, she's born from sea foam that formed when Cronus chopped off Uranus's godly equipment and tossed it into the ocean. Yes, that's probably the least romantic origin ever assigned to the goddess of romance. Aphrodite was so stunningly beautiful that mortals and gods alike basically lost their ability to make good decisions in her presence. She had an actual magical belt, the cestus, that made her irresistible to anyone. Which, let's be honest, is a mildly unfair advantage in the love department. Despite being the embodiment of desire, Aphrodite's own love life was complicated. She was married to Hephaestus, the hard-working god of fire and blacksmithing. But she famously preferred the company of Ares, the god of war. Which tells you everything you need to know about her taste in men. Their affair was exposed when Hephaestus trapped them mid-romance in a golden net and summoned the other gods to come take a look. Ancient Greek, where revenge and group humiliation were considered excellent conflict resolution. But Aphrodite wasn't all chaos and cheating. She had a softer side, too. She helped young lovers, presided over weddings, and brought beauty to the world. She was the goddess people prayed to before confessing a crush or trying to charm their way out of something stupid. Still, she wasn't above starting wars. She's the one who offered Helen of Troy to Paris, sparking the Trojan War. Why? Because she wanted to win a divine beauty contest. Yes, really. An entire civilization burned because Aphrodite wanted a golden apple that said, to the fairest, she's the patron goddess of desire, not stability, beautiful, intoxicating, and absolutely not interested in your relationship boundaries. Hephaestus was the god of fire, metalwork, craftsmanship, and being, the only Olympian who actually had a job, while the rest of the gods were busy starting wars, chasing mortals, or throwing lightning like confetti. Hephaestus was in the workshop, forging weapons, building palaces, and muttering under his breath. His origin story varies, but none of it is flattering. In one version, he's born deformed, and Hera, repulsed by his appearance, tosses him off Mount Olympus like unwanted luggage. In another, Zeus does the tossing after a family argument. Either way, the man falls from heaven, lands hard, and ends up with a permanent limp and probably some abandonment issues the size of Crete. Despite the rocky start, Hephaestus gets back to Olympus, not through forgiveness, but through leverage. He crafts Hera a magical golden throne, which, surprise, traps her. The gods beg him to return and free her. He agrees, but only if they let him back into the divine club. Negotiation nailed. Now back in Olympus, Hephaestus becomes the divine handyman. He forges Zeus's thunderbolts, Poseidon's trident, Achilles' armor, and pretty much every magical item anyone brags about. If it glows, flies, or explodes, Hephaestus probably made it while working unpaid overtime. And yet, for all his brilliance, he was consistently disrespected. His wife, Aphrodite, assigned, not chosen, famously cheated on him with Ares. His family, emotionally distant, to put it kindly. His co-workers, constantly breaking the stuff he just fixed. But Hephaestus never lashed out like Ares, or schemed like Hera. His revenge was creative, elegant, passive-aggressive. Even that net he used to catch Aphrodite and Ares mid-affair. Artisan-crafted and designed for maximum public humiliation. Practical and poetic. He's not glamorous. He doesn't sparkle. But he's the god who built Olympus. Hephaestus is the unsung hero, the working-class deity of the gods, the patron of blacksmiths, artisans, inventors, and anyone who's ever screamed at a malfunctioning machine and then fixed it. With duct tape and rage. Hermes is the god of travelers, commerce, thieves, messaging, and suspiciously fast talking. He's the guy with winged sandals, a staff that probably came with no user manual, and an energy that screams, "I've already eaten 3 olives and lied twice today." Unlike most gods, Hermes hits the ground running. On the day of his birth, he crawled out of his crib, stole Apollo's cattle, invented the lyre using a tortoise shell, and then returned to his cradle before anyone noticed. That's day 1. Most gods take centuries to cause that much chaos. Hermes needed about 6 hours. He's known as the messenger of the gods, but that's underselling it. He didn't just deliver messages. He smuggled souls into the underworld, guided heroes through enemy territory, and probably invented the divine version of express shipping. If there was trouble, Hermes was already 2 steps ahead of it, leaving behind a suspiciously vague alibi and a charming grin. He also served as the god of commerce and trade, because nothing says trustworthy marketplace energy like the same guy who oversees thievery. Hermes represented negotiation, persuasion, and morally flexible entrepreneurship, basically the patron saint of salesmen, travelers, pickpockets, and anyone who's ever bartered at a flea market. But he wasn't just a charming rogue. Hermes was loyal when it counted. He helped Odysseus outsmart Circe, gave Perseus the tools to behead Medusa, and even guided souls to the underworld with surprising tenderness, proving that beneath all that mischief, he had a job he took seriously. Hermes also had a signature accessory, the caduceus, a winged staff with 2 intertwined snakes. It's often confused with the symbol of medicine, which is ironic considering Hermes's primary qualifications were speed, lying, and professional boundary hop. If Olympus had an IT department, Hermes would be the over-caffeinated tech guy who speaks in acronyms, solves your problems in 2 minutes, and then disappears to go optimize cloud functions which may or may not involve stealing Zeus's wallet. He's clever, quick, unreliable, and deeply lovable, the god of getting things done, getting away with it, and not answering follow-up questions. Demeter is the goddess of the harvest, agriculture, grain, and giving life to the world. She's in the mood. When Demeter is happy, crops flourish, trees bear fruit, and the world blooms with abundance. When she's upset, well, say hello to winter, famine, and general withering disappointment. She's one of the quieter Olympians. She doesn't throw thunderbolts, doesn't start wars, doesn't turn people into animals. But don't mistake quiet for harmless. She can shut down the planet's food supply with one bad mood, which, as it turns out, she did. Enter Persephone, her beloved daughter, the literal flower child of Olympus. One day, Persephone is out picking flowers, minding her own mythological business, when the earth opens up and Hades, god of the underworld and professional kidnapper, swoops in and abducts her. Classic Greek parenting crisis. Demeter, understandably, loses her divine mind. She searches the earth in grief, refusing to let anything grow until her daughter is returned. Crops fail, animals starve, mortals beg for mercy. Demeter's response: no Persephone, no produce. Artemis is the goddess of the hunt, wilderness, wild animals, and the moon. She's also the goddess of no, I will not explain myself, and yes, that was a threat. Often depicted with a bow in one hand and zero tolerance in the other, Artemis is one of the few Olympians who didn't need thunderbolts or love potions. She had precision, discipline, and a pack of divine wolves. Twin sister to Apollo, Artemis arrived in this world in typical overachiever fashion. She helped deliver her own brother shortly after her own birth. From that moment forward, she was done with men. She swore off marriage, romance, and anything remotely resembling emotional vulnerability. Instead, she roamed forests, hunted stags, and surrounded herself with a loyal band of maiden followers who all shared her love for nature and disinterest in drama. Artemis is best known for her purity, not in a Victorian fainting couch way, but more in the touch me, and I'll turn you into a deer way. Take Actaeon, for instance, a hunter who accidentally stumbled upon her bathing. Rather than calmly explain boundaries, she transformed him into a stag and let his own dogs tear him apart. Message received. She was fiercely protective, especially of women and children. While many Olympian gods treated mortals like chess pieces or dating apps, Artemis acted as a divine shield for the vulnerable. She punished those who disrespected sacred nature or harmed the innocent, and her vengeance was swift, poetic, and usually fatal. As a moon goddess, she represented calm, clarity, and mystery. She brought light to the night and guided travelers through darkness, metaphorically and literally. If Apollo was the sun's blinding brilliance, Artemis was the moon's cold, focused, stareless warmth, more watchfulness. She wasn't flashy, but she didn't need to be. Artemis had presence. You didn't challenge her, you didn't flirt with her. You just hoped she wasn't aiming in your direction. In modern terms, Artemis is the original independent woman, free, and entirely uninterested in what you think of her. She didn't live in Olympus. She ran in the woods. Apollo is the god of the sun, music, prophecy, healing, poetry, archery, and honestly, at this point, just assume he put his name on every job opening on Mount Olympus. If the gods had linked in, Apollo's profile would crash. The site, twin brother of Artemis, Apollo is the shiny, radiant poster child of Olympus' golden hair, golden lyre, golden chariot. He's the reason we have daylight, according to Greek myth, as he literally drove the sun across the sky every day in a flaming chariot. No pressure if you're running late, but beneath all that brilliance lies a lot of feelings. Apollo is dramatic, he's emotional. He's the guy who sings ballads after a breakup and then curses the person who rejected him literally. Ask Daphne, she turned into a tree just to get away from him. Apollo mourned her loss, then turned her into a sacred symbol and wore her leaves as a crown, because that's healthy. He's also the god of prophecy, which means he technically knows things will end badly and still gets upset when they do. Classic overachiever energy. He established the Oracle of Delphi, where priestesses, fueled by divine madness, mumbled poetic riddles that somehow explained everyone's destiny. Very user-friendly. Apollo had a complicated relationship with love. He chased several mortals, was rejected by most, and reacted with varying degrees of poetic overkill. When a Spartan prince named Hyacinthus died during a discus game, possibly from Apollo's own poorly thrown disci, was so distraught he turned the boy into a flower, which is sweet if you ignore the blunt force trauma part. Despite all this, Apollo was also a healer. His son Asclepius became the god of medicine, and Apollo himself could cure plagues or cause them, depending on how offended he felt that day. In short, Apollo was brilliance wrapped in insecurity, power dressed in poetry, and charm with a short fuse, the kind of god who'd write you a love song and then shoot you with an arrow. If you didn't clap, Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, home, and domestic peace, which is ancient Greek for the only Olympian who didn't cause weekly international incidents. She was the eldest child of Cronus and Rhea, and also the first to be swallowed whole by her charmingly paranoid father. Later, she was the last to be vomited back up when Zeus overthrew him. Which means, technically, she's both the oldest and youngest Olympian. Yes, Greek mythology is a funhouse mirror of logic. Unlike her more chaotic siblings, Hestia chose peace. She didn't participate in power struggles, didn't throw curses, didn't sleep with mortals, and didn't even throw shade. She was offered a throne on Olympus, shrugged politely, and gave it up to Dionysus. Why? So she could tend the eternal flame and not get dragged into family drama queen behavior. She presided over the hearth, the center of every home, temple, and city. Wherever there was a flame burning for warmth, food, or ritual, Hestia was there in spirit. No temples in her name, no scandalous myths, just a quiet presence that made everything else work. The original background essential. She was also the goddess of hospitality. In a world where shelter and food meant survival, she represented the sacred duty of caring for guests. Invoking her meant your fire would stay lit, your bread wouldn't burn, and hopefully your relatives would leave on time. And unlike most Olympians, she didn't go around turning people into animals, inanimate objects, or ironic morality lessons. Hestia didn't need revenge. She had a well-swept floor and inner peace. Because of her, every meal began and ended with an offering. Every city had her flame burning in its heart, and every prayer circle probably had someone whispering, "Thank you for not being a handful." If the gods were a dysfunctional office, Zeus would be the CEO with boundary issues. Athena, the overqualified strategist. Dionysus, the HR violation. And Hestia would be the calm office manager, keeping the coffee warm and the lights on while everyone else argued about whose temple caught fire. Hestia reminds us that there's power in stillness, value in simplicity. And sometimes the most essential figure is the one who doesn't demand attention, but holds everything together. Persephone is one of the most fascinating figures in Greek mythology. Goddess with a split personality written directly into the seasons. She's the bloom of spring and the chill of death, life and decay, flower, crown, and iron throne. She's the daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest, which already puts her in the realm of life and fertility. But then things took a turn, as they often do in Greek myth, when Hades, lord of the underworld, saw her picking flowers and decided, wife material. He abducted her straight into the underworld, no discussion, no coffee first. Demeter, naturally, was devastated. She scoured the earth, and when no one told her where Persephone had gone, she shut down agriculture entirely. The result, global famine and an angry mob of hungry mortals. Eventually, Zeus intervened, not out of fatherly concern but because no one was sacrificing anything while starving. A compromise was reached. Persephone could return, if she hadn't eaten anything in the underworld, which, of course, she had 6 pomegranate seeds, just enough to legally bind her to a part-time gig in the land of the dead. Thus began her dual role, half the year on Earth with Demeter, ushering in spring and summer, the other half with Hades in the underworld, giving us fall and winter. The ancient Greeks invented seasonal depression with a myth. But here's where things get interesting. Over time, Persephone embraced her role as Queen of the Dead. She wasn't just a sad, kidnapped flower girl. She became a ruler, firm and quietly powerful. Mortals prayed to her for mercy, for safe passage, for understanding the balance between life and death. She represents transformation, just seasonal, but emotional, the shift from innocence to strength, from being taken to taking control. Persephone is the goddess of duality. She walks through flowers and bones with equal grace. She's the reason flowers bloom, and the reason they wilt.